flight attendants and pilots of Reddit, what are some things that happen mid-flight that only the crew are aware of? This started off with us blissfully unaware, ended with mild pant shitting. I was flying to France in one of those planes with the TV screen up front to show the flight path and where you currently are. I was just about to fall asleep when the captain asked over the PA if there was a doctor on board and if they could go to seat hash. I knew this was bad. The flight path changed to Canada and we had to make an emergency landing. We were stuck there for 2 hours. When we finally got to France, his entire row was quarantined off. I have no idea what the fuck happened. Not a flight attendant or a pilot, but I discovered there is such a thing as ahead when I saw one of the flight attendants giving to one of the pilots mid-flight. Now, the thing to keep in mind was this was before 9/11, when the cockpit wasn't kept so securely locked. There was a bit of a bug spreading around the plane, which I was asked to take care of since I was the only doctor on board. I made my way to the cockpit to inform the pilot of the condition of the passengers, and as soon as I opened the door, I see the flight attendant bent over with her head in the pilot's lap. Far here, at mid-flight I noticed a strange thing with one of the slides was not armed properly and had an issue with it. However, we landed safely and nobody of the packs knew nothing. There's a special frequency called guard that all aircraft are supposed to monitor. It's for emergencies or for when an aircraft ends up on a wrong frequency and the controllers need to get contact with them to change them to the right frequency. It's full of pilots meowing at each other and people accidentally asking for gate assignments and making other radio calls. Pilot here, late to the party as usual. But sometimes the passengers may be having a nice quiet flight in the back while the pilots are up front dodging thunderstorms and yelling their heads off. We will not only transport dead bodies, but also live transplants, like hearts and lungs. I particularly like the live transplants, because we get to cut to the front of the line for Kiev, and we get all the shortcuts to our destination. Tip for those who get motion sickness, try not to move your head around. Pilots move their eyes instead of their heads, to look at the instruments in the flight deck. Also try to sit in a seat over the wing. This area of the plane doesn't rotate as much during climbs and descents. Flight attendants can't do pilot's job, but pilots can't do flight attendants' jobs for sure. We aren't hired for our people skills. Don't take off your shoes to go to the bathroom. People pee on the floor all the time. Edit, wow you'll rock. Thanks for the gold guys. Blue skies and tail winds. Pilot here. We only get paid when the doors are closed and the pushback has commenced. If we are delayed or sitting with the door open, we are just as annoyed as you are. At altitude we are constantly in contact with air traffic control and change to different center frequencies or control for other than US locations. We are also doing fuel checks to make sure the fuel burn isn't abnormal, dodging weather, and probably bitching about scheduling. Pilots are on their phones or reading the newspaper all the time. Pilot is sleeping and co-pilot is flying. And there are dead bodies in the cargo. Source, my mom who is a former flight attendant. An instructor told me that he and his training buddy both fell asleep for about 45 minutes at the same time while gaining hours for licensing. The plane was in complete autopilot mode. Clear skies, zero turbulence. They both swore if they ever flew again they would hand off sleep like handing off the controls. Edit, for further context, he told me that after both of them awoke, they were fucking terrified. Neither had no idea what had happened, even if anything had happened. Luckily, it was over the Gulf of Mexico and at a low enough altitude where it wouldn't impact commercial airliners. Their trim was set before the nap, so they only gained a couple hundred feet of altitude. But rest assured, each were not happy with themselves. They immediately contacted ATC, verified their position, and turned around to go back to the airport, white palming the yoke the entire way. Oh, and this was at night too. They needed the night experience. Edit 2. They were in a Cessna 152. This wasn't an oxygen issue. It was just two buddies not communicating with each other and both assuming the other was flying. Edit 3. You're right. C-152s don't have autopilot. By autopilot I meant trim, which would confuse people. They were also very lucky the trim was set to gain altitude, not lower. I was just speaking in layman terms for the non-pilots to understand better. Like I said, they were definitely thoroughly freaked out, and both admitted how badly they fucked up. The scariest moment of my days, when the FAR opens the internal back door, the closet we all throw our overpass bags in, without calling us in the flight deck first. That ding and master caution gets me every time. I've got an original one for you all. There is a radio frequency we all are required to monitor. It's called GUARD. It's for emergency use and is designed for maydays and for air traffic control to reach aircraft that may have lost radio contact or to relay messages from aircraft to other aircraft, etc. Every day this frequency is abused. You will hear hundreds of professional aviators meowing, yelling obscenities at each other, and making fun of one airline or another. Oftentimes what will start it is some poor guy accidentally transmitting his PA announcement to passengers on the GUARD frequency, followed by the very mature outbreaks for about 5 to 10 minutes. It's the worst on the East Coast. Edit. Just today I heard an airline aircraft trying to relay info about a medical emergency on this frequency through one of their fellow company aircraft. They couldn't finish any of their sentences without people yelling, "Yeah, on GUARD, hey, nobody cares about yeah passenger, hey, you're on GUARD 2A. My uncle was a pilot. He says that most people don't understand how much of the airplane is run by computers. The pilots are necessary, but a lot of the element of flying are automated nowadays. Automation in general is taking over in most industries, and it's crazy when things break and you go back to manual and realize the amount of work needed to do the same thing. I work as a marine engineer, and in general we can leave the engine room unattended from 1700 until 0800 the next morning, with a quick set of rounds in the middle of that, because the automation will do everything for me. The system manages everything, and will give me an alarm when it needs me. Engine getting a bit too hot? System sticks a second cooling pump on. Tank level low? System sticks the top up pump on for a bit, and turns it off when full. Fire on an engine? Hey, I've changed over generators, released the water mist, set of the alarm all, before you've had the chance to get your pants on. But when the automation doesn't work, I need 5 people in the engine room just to keep us moving. I need one guy in the MCR managing alarms. I need one on the engine manually controlling the RPM. I need one guy controlling the pitch of the CPP, one in the steering gear keeping a heading, and one on a fire watch. If I want full speed, then double that for the other engine room. Automation massively reduces the manpower needs, but when things go wrong you can find you don't have enough people. TLDR, automation is amazing, manual is hard. Automation is hard to fix, and manual is easy. Edit. Holy shit, I got gold for talking about a job that I mostly dislike. Thanks, stranger. A former teacher told us his story that fits the question. Every year he would make trips to Europe that were for an educational experience or related to the subject he taught in one way or another. In reality, it was just an amazing way to spend 2 weeks in Europe. One year he took a student's brother with, since he needed an extra person to have the minimum amount of required students. After the 10-hour flight, the flight attendant walks up to him and asks if said brother was a part of his group. He says yes. Apparently, on the flight he stopped the flight attendant and asked her to have with him in the bathroom. She denied, but he continued to ask her several more times through the flight. It reached a point to where she no longer felt anywhere near comfortable. She asked my teacher if she could notify the authorities and have him sent back to the States. He agreed. There were no immediate flights back home, so a distant relative of his had to be contacted. He stayed with a relative he had never even met for an entire weekend. He was then put on a flight back home the following week. TL. Dr. Kid repeatedly asks flight attendant to have sex with him during his 10-hour flight. She contacts authorities. He gets sent back. Edit 1. Spelling. Flight attendants don't get paid on the ground. Only flying hours are paid. We are slave labor on the ground, and duties are continually added to our unpaid work time because the company knows they don't have to pay us. We show up 2 to 3 hours before we even start getting paid, and some days we will work up to 14 hours and only get paid for 5 or 6 of those hours. It should be illegal. Please be kind when you are boarding the plane and getting all pissy about your bags etc. The flight attendant is a volunteer. While she is helping you on the ground, she is essentially doing you a favor. A lady who was feeling very ill crapped her pants mid-flight. A very kind far managed to get her covered in a blanket and into the bathroom with barely anyone noticing, and then gave her a pair of her own pants to wear so she wouldn't be embarrassed.